Everybody, I'm very excited today, and on this program, we are joined today by Mrs. Maths Ireland, Amanda McGinn. Amanda is a Leaving Cert state examiner, maths teacher, 10 plus years in the education space, also an appeals examiner. Amanda is at the top of her field, an extremely popular teacher. Obviously for maths, she runs the Maths Teachers Club, has a maths clinic, and coaches and works with young people to help them become better at maths. Amanda, welcome. Very excited that you're joining me. Obviously, with Raise the Game, I work with a lot of students, and every week the big feedback to me is they struggle with maths. And my question to you is, why do so many students struggle with maths? You are a maths genius. And what can they do to help themselves to move on with the subject of maths?
Well, isn't that the $1 million question? So I suppose if I was to categorize it in three different ways, in my opinion, and I suppose I've got the benefit of dealing with students in a classroom setting, dealing with them in small groups, dealing with them in one-to-one groups, and I suppose also having the experience of seeing their work in terms of state exams and things like that. So I definitely have seen every aspect of the struggle, right? And the struggle is real. So I suppose there's three main things that I'd say from a maths point of view that make them struggle. The first one is that, not everybody is built to do maths well and to understand maths with ease. Yes, you can learn it, but some people are just natural storytellers via numeracy, and they're the people that are excelling. Some of us tell stories with literacy, some of us tell stories with our crafts and our hands and what we create. So I suppose initially not everybody is going to be good at maths because we're all not built the same. That's the first thing. And I think once someone understands that and recognizes that, that's the first thing.
And I used to compare myself with one of my best friends, Padraig, and he is a maths genius because he has mathematical intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his primary intelligence. So,
Exactly.
yes. But a young person doesn't realize that, right?
Mm-hmm. No, they're comparing themselves to Mary sitting beside them. Do you know what I mean? And you're just not built the same. It's as simple as that. The next thing I'd say as well is that, a building blocks, maths from day dot is a building block, and we are building, building, building. I always use the analogy that we have a maths toolbox, and we are filling that maths toolbox with maths skills and maths knowledge and maths intelligence from the minute we start counting. And I think in a student's journey, if there is a stumble, if there is a struggle, if there is a bad experience, that can influence their future in maths, again, whether it's in primary school, in secondary school. So a stumble can cause there to be a struggle at some point as well, and if they can't recover from that struggle, that's there. So again, it's not always taught equally everywhere, in everybody's different experience. So that is definitely something that can happen as well. Not everybody has the resilience to get over that.
And some people would call that a story, right? So it's the bad maths test in third class or fourth class, and suddenly it's I'm no good at maths, and that could dominate your life. Really interesting. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And I find as well that feeling can be hereditary, because when the students in first year and they're getting lots more maths homework than they're used to, and there's a parent or an adult with them and they're like, oh, I was terrible at maths and I did okay, and so those feelings can be hereditary, I think, as well, on that point. And I suppose the third one, and this may be agreeable, may be disagreeable with some people, but reputation of the level of maths that you study can make people feel that they're struggling when actually they are doing great for their ability. So I feel sometimes this H1 vibe seems very elitist, in terms of if you're not getting a H1, like, you are not successful at maths. Whereas the student who is working damn hard and has not stopped trying and reaching out, asking for help and doing the work, and has crawled that ladder slightly and is getting an 04 and is absolutely on top of the world with the 04, they are just as successful. And I just think that we need to celebrate those people more as well. I think it's like, if you're not getting a H1, you're not successful. Do you know what I mean? Or I think that nearly invents a struggle when there actually isn't one.
I deal with this all the
Yeah.
time. And where, I was only coaching someone the other day and she got 48 out of 50, I think, it was a maths test that day, but she was thinking about the 2% or the two she didn't get right. So there's a huge pressure point people putting themselves
Mm-hmm.
to, and it's all about, and that's the problem with school, it's all about grades, isn't it? And your C, or what I would call a C, or a H4 in old money, it's someone else's H1, or an O4 for someone is someone else's H1. So what I say to students, play your own game. In terms of what are some of the common mistakes students make when they're trying to study maths?
One of the main problems I fix with students is that, and this is of no shade to any book or any notes or any teacher, but the nature and the way we tend to learn maths is very skills based. So you have a skill, you learn it, you put it in your toolbox, and you move on. We learn maths in a lot of cases in isolation, but yet we are expected to examine it in a very cohesive, cumulative way. So there's a disconnect. And I think, again, it does come down to the environment it's taught in, but it also comes down to the student's ability to be able to convert. So sometimes they can convert naturally themselves, and I suppose that's their mathematical intelligence kicking in. Some students need to be literally dragged through that process to help them do it. So I suppose it just depends on, if they can make that connect. So that's kind of the main thing, that where that struggle versus, the mistakes that are made. The second thing as well is that we need to know how to reuse math skills. So like, for example, there's something called simultaneous equations, right? And it's essentially you've got two lines crossing each other and you're finding the point of intersection, okay? You use that as an algebra question. So that can be examined, we'll say, at Leaving Cert ordinary level as an algebra question. It can also be examined in functions, because functions is all about graphs. And it can also be examined there. It can also be examined in coordinate geometry, the line chapter. So technically, in 3 different locations in the one maths exam, you can use that skill 3 times.
Okay. Yes.
So I think the understanding of, repeating, reusing, being resourceful with your knowledge is one of the big things. And like I'm, dedicated to sharing this information for that reason, because it's like, it's not that deep. It doesn't have to be that hard. You just need to know how to manage it. You
And
need to.
it's
Sorry.
interesting you talk about
Mm.
the skills. And when you say manage it, are you talking about the concepts, the skills, the ideas?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like there has to be, you know, um, you gather up all these skills, but now you need to know how and where and why of those skills. Where do you use them? Why do you use them? How do you use them? And I think the students who get it, and there is no issues. Well, I'm sure they trip up, but I mean the general flow of their journey through the Leaving Cert Maths course is fairly smooth. The students who don't spot that and don't get it and don't see it, that's the bumpy journey until they
And
meet me.
until they meet you, and that's where you work the magic.
Yes.
But a big challenge, obviously, and I have students that I work with of all age groups, and I know you do too. So second year is really important, isn't it? Because that's when
Mhm.
things start to change. So
Yes.
for any parent who might be watching this, and I get students and we saw this very much last year, I think, with COVID. Students who struggle in second or third year, or whose teachers weren't tech savvy, they didn't get that, level of attention or work in second year, and they were doing the Leaving Cert, say, last year.
Yeah.
So there was a gap. Um, any advice for parents as to when to do an intervention, the type of intervention, if their son, their daughter is struggling with maths early days?
To be honest, and like I'm very conscious of like the grinds culture that's out there, and it's not for everybody, and it's not in, it's not ideal for everybody. However, sometimes if you get the right person and get the right help, it's about getting it at the right time. So, as an example, this time of year, fifth years in Leaving Cert higher level are feeling the pressure. So the course is no longer new and shiny, and the enthusiasm is starting to dip a little, and they're now, they've discovered the pace is faster and the stuff is harder and there's more to recall on a regular basis. And this would be the perfect time for a fifth year student to get a bit of help. Fifth year ordinary level and fifth year higher level, they're both in the same boat. This is the time. There's no point in, well, there is a point, but the effectiveness of the help is not going to be great, a month after their mocks. Like there's still time to make progress, and it still can be a positive story, but this is the time where if they got a little bit of help now, they might need it in the future.
Yeah.
It's a really good help. But parents wise, I would say it's really important as well to understand their students' learning style. Make sure that they understand what's the best way for them to learn. Appreciate what their strengths are and appreciate what their weaknesses are. And I suppose encourage the small wins, and make sure that just because their friend's daughter is doing really, really well, not to be comparing. I think the only thing we should be comparing is what we did yesterday versus today, or what we got last week versus today. I think that's a big thing.
I love that. And just in terms of, you just said, like, I was going to ask how a parent can help, and you said to spot their learning style. So for any parent out there is going, what is a learning style? And I know what that is, and you know what that is. Um, how can a parent spot a learning style and help a student, or help their son or daughter, their child?
Well, I suppose you need to see what their strengths are. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose we have several different learning styles, and in a way, in a quick way, it's, can they, if they hear it, will they remember it better? If they see it, if they speak it, or if they do it, and without like any shadow of a doubt, maths is a doing subject. You have to do maths to be good at maths. But I suppose the way we can translate that information is, are they, if they see it being done, if it's an audible instruction, is it a written instruction? So I suppose what they need to do is, if they can help them with one particular question or one particular skill, try a variety of different approaches. Because that's what I would do naturally as a teacher. Like if he's sitting here with someone and they're not getting it, I'm like, okay, Amanda, change, what are we doing next? You change lanes. And I suppose to a parent, if you're telling them, and they still can't do it, well, you need to stop telling them, and you need to get another idea, and you need to write it, or we need to, I had a student, a primary school student actually, and I'm not a primary school teacher, but I said I'd, help a student, and they could not do long division. They just couldn't do it. They just could not do it. They were told how to do it. They were, they written instructions. They couldn't do it. So they were a hands-on learner. And all we did was, the process is you divide, you multiply, you subtract, and you add. Okay? You subtract and you bring down, excuse me. So we had M, D, S, B. And I knew this person, and I literally knew that they had a mom, a dad, a sister, sorry, a mom. Oh, hold on, I'm getting
you're using an acronym. You're using an acronym.
Multiply, divide, yeah, change and bring down. Yeah, so we had, and I used the members of their family to remind them what to do. And I mean, Ray, 2 examples, and that child could long divide like no other.
Brilliant. You made it real for them.
Yeah, you just have to find the knack that fits them,
Yes.
and
And
it doesn't have to be a label, it just has to be the knack for them. That's all you have to do.
love it. And what you're doing there is you're bringing concepts to life. You're bringing it off the paper. Is there any other little things like that you want to share? And one of the things I was going to ask is, for a lot of students, they're looking for the hacks. The top 3 hacks for a junior cert or the top 3 hacks for a leaving cert. How do you bring concepts to life? And have you got any, what I like to call the big dominoes to make the other dominoes fall over?
So I'm a chatty person, right? I love the chat. And I run a classroom where we are friends and we have a chat and we have a bit of a giggle at times. And I love starting a little bit of a discussion. When you're doing the role or, just the simple few minutes at the start at the end. So a few examples I throw out to students is we all have the weather app and we have, there's 25% chance of rain, right?
Oh, okay.
Right. So, and with a statistic, so I say it's not that there's 25% a chance of rain, it's that 25% of my area will get rain, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
students love this, and it doesn't seem to be well known of a fact that it's actually not exactly how we perceive the percentage to mean. So it's like there is rain, there's 100% chance of rain, but only 25% of this geographical area will get that rain, right? And I mean, in some classrooms, there has been chaos because people are actually having a row going, what do you mean? That doesn't make sense. Da, 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 da. And it's kind of like, well, that's statistics. You can misread and misunderstand statistics. And if you don't understand what you're calculating, it means something completely different. Do you know what I mean? So
It does. It's fascinating. And what I
yeah,
love there is you're bringing it into real life.
yes, yeah.
And when I was studying statistics in college, I just couldn't get it, probability. And it's only when if the people who are into the gambling and all of that stuff, they understand this because it's a different ball game. But the point is you're taking maths
Mhm.
and you're making it real.
Exactly. Exactly. And even things like a lot of calculations involved, especially with the likes of geometry and trigonometry. There's quite a few decimal places, and sometimes we leave something in surd form or decimal form or and if somebody rounds too early or rounds incorrectly, I'll just say your bridge is too short.
Okay.
If you're an engineer, your bridge is too short now. Do you know what I mean? Was that a clever thing to do? No, and it's just little simple things like that. Do you know what I mean?
I
Um,
love it. I love it. I love it. You're making it
basically,
real. You're making it relevant, and you're making it fun
yeah,
for
yeah.
students. And the discussion part is so interesting as well. Maths has got very wordy, obviously, since the
Mm.
project maths. And for students who have dyslexia or dyscalculia, obviously, maths is difficult. And only the other day, I was speaking to parents of a young girl who has dyscalculia. Um, how do you approach that for neurodiverse students?
It's difficult. It's not easy, like it's like especially section B. So your long questions, your 7, 8, 9s, and 10s, like they're proper stories with context and things like that. You need to go back to basics with it, and unfortunately, those students have to work a little bit harder to get through that question. And unfortunately, that's their reality. But having the processes in place. So understanding, spotting what topic we're working with straight away, and you don't have to read everything to spot it. You can spot functions a mile away. You can spot, statistics a mile away. So I suppose spotting what topic you're working with is essential first, because then you've eliminated a lot of other noise in the background. So you're focusing in on one thing. I suppose keywords, highlighting, like I know, it sounds kind of basic, but the bread and butter skills of students with the likes of those difficulties, they are really, really essential. And knowing the keywords, and in maths, we do want a calculation most of the time. So it's hard to get away from that. Unfortunately, you do have to show me the calculation. So I suppose it's just trying to be very mechanical about how you go about it if you can. So identify the topic, identify the final goal. So are you solving for something? Are you, finding the length of a side? Are you, what I mean, finding a volume of something? Find the final goal, get the relevant formulas down, get the relevant information down, and just try and be as mechanical about it as you can. But unfortunately, it is tough. Like it's really tough,
It is, and
it's
for
really
a lot
tough
of
for them.
students,
Yeah.
when they come home from school, and one of the things I'm noticing is fatigue today. Man, the
Yeah.
students are so tired, and I think that's a symptom of the world that we live in. It's very draining. People
Yeah.
are very busy. They're scheduled within an inch of their life. They might
Yeah.
be doing a lot of grinds as well. And
Hmm.
now, when a student comes home, they have to get themselves to sit down and do some maths. So,
Yeah.
any advice about, and any advice about getting yourself in the mood to do a little bit of maths?
I don't know. That isn't that a funny one now? Who's in the mood? I do maths all day, every day now. It wouldn't upset me, but not everybody's in the mood. But I have to say, the best way to gain anything, whether it's 1% or 20% or 50%, is a little and often. And a little and often doesn't, that marginal gains ethos is perfectly suited to maths. And there's going to be people out there who can sit for 2 hours. I'm not one of those people and never was. A little bit and often, and appreciate that you're building, 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 and filling that toolbox worth of skills. Even if a student said to themselves, right, I'm going to do an extra half an hour, it's better than, and then when they're happy doing their extra half an hour 3 times a week, maybe they might go, oh, do you know what? This is going really, really well. Let's do 45 minutes, and they will build from there. But like, the end of the day, you have to do maths to be good at maths. There is a reality check too. Like, you can't just
It
assume
is.
it will, it's not osmosis. You have to do
And
it. You know
I
what I
think
mean?
there's a kind of some subjects you can wing a little bit, but maths is just not one of those
You have to do
subjects.
it, yeah. So
You
my
got to.
advice on that would be, don't overwhelm yourself. Do a little. Commit to something achievable and digestible, because a lot of students get very overwhelmed with maths, especially when they look at a massive big book, and like the exam papers are just getting bigger and bigger every year. It won't be long till they're a doorstop. And I think small achievable goals, and then you'll begin to feel confident and you can bulk it up then. I think that's important.
And what I say to students, because they ask me all the time, how long do I need to spend on study? How long do I, and they're looking for a magic number. But I
Mm.
do emphasize maths is a practice subject, and you got to
Mhm.
practice a little bit every day. It's
Yeah.
just, and if you can get yourself into the habit, then that will help. And one of the things I was going to say about the mood, sometimes watching a little video on YouTube can kind
Yeah.
of get you in the mood, and then you start into a little bit of practice, and suddenly 10 minutes becomes half an hour very quickly. Um,
100%.
any
Yeah.
advice on exam strategy? Obviously, the students, and for this presentation or this video, students could be at different stages of the
Mhm.
school year. So right now, it could be Christmas tests, it could be mock exams, or it could be coming into June. Any advice around, the exams themselves, how a student can acquit
Yeah.
themselves better in the exams?
Well, I suppose if we start from fifth year, and it doesn't matter whether you're an ordinary level or higher level student, right? What you want to be doing is doing your classwork and homework with intention. You want to be present. You want to be doing it knowing that you are building a foundation upon which other topics are going to rest on and depend on. And if you are falling behind or something is catching you out, you need to flag it now, get it sorted, and move on. So the whole goal of fifth year, in my opinion, for a student should be keeping on top of what's going on and making it the best that it can be for you. I do always recommend, even from fifth year, doing a little bit extra. So again, whatever is accessible for that person, a little bit extra just to cast back on what's been done before. Because then you don't have a huge mountain to climb with the Christmas exams and the summer exams in fifth year. And there is a lot of threats going around the end of fifth year. Oh, now if you don't pass this test now, you'll have to drop and da da da. There's an awful lot of that happening. And I suppose, look, at the end of the day, teachers have to manage who they have and who they don't have and what's in their classroom, and that's fair enough. But, it seems like an awful hill to climb for a lot of students at the end of fifth year. So that was, I'd say, be intentional, appreciate that you're there to learn and build skills. So focus on that and do a little bit extra looking back on what you've done previous throughout the whole year. Moving into sixth year then is the business end of the year, and it's mocks, 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 points, points, points. H1, H2, O1, O2, all that jazz, right? Entry requirements. Again, we are now continuing to learn with intent. Great effort in class, great effort in homework, but we need to cast back to fifth year work a little bit more intensely. So again, maybe build a little bit more extra time in to cast back, look back, revise. We're probably into exam questions more regularly as well, and you're building up the problem solving side of things now. So you've got that to add in. Just because you did coordinate geometry, in the spring of fifth year, doesn't mean you still know it or still remember it.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose that would be my advice. You kind of take two different approaches, fifth and sixth year.
And they say, what is it, fifth year, you bake the cake, sixth year, you ice the cake. So you've got to get that foundation in. But for a lot of students, suddenly they land in sixth year, they haven't done the work. And then we have this whole, do I stay in honors? Do I drop down? What do I do? There's the bonus points. Any advice around students trying to make those decisions?
I've had students sitting here beside me crying over points and H6s and 25 bloody points. And my advice is, right, and because I've seen all the different variations of this in person beside me here, is if you need these points and if this is the only way you can get those extra points and you are on that cusp of a H6, with some help, some good advice, proper advice, you probably can get over that hill, right? But you have to be dedicated, you have to be willing to put in the work. If somebody is around the H6 and they don't really need those 25 points, or they can get it somewhere else, Ray, that's much easier.
Good advice.
It's not worth the stress.
It's good advice.
It just seems to be that the higher level maths, getting these 25 points is causing so much stress. Like if someone is absolutely brilliant at Irish and they're losing in Irish because they're trying to gain in maths, which is just not suitable for them, they're better off excelling in the Irish. Do you know what I mean? So it has to be an individual decision, but I just think it's okay. It's okay if you don't do higher level Leaving Cert math if it's not for you, and not everybody is dedicated enough and willing to put in the work to get it too. So, that's okay. I just think
Of course it's okay. And there's a lot of pressure, right? There's a lot of pressure, and I see this in lots of different schools, and particularly with girls as well. And this might be a little bit controversial, but with girls and boys, girls they put a lot of pressure. Not to say boys don't, and then they've all the labeling that goes on with am I in higher or ordinary. But here's one of the big things, and I saw this somewhere recently being said that girls they're less likely to take risks than boys, and as a result, boys on the exam papers, that might inhibit them on taking a punt on a few different things. Have you noticed this? Is this something that you would see, that kind of behavior?
Yes, like look, girls are an awful lot in there. You know what I mean? There's an awful lot of, well, if I do this and if I don't do that and I do this and what will they think of that? You know what I mean? There's an awful lot going on in here in terms of perceptions and what they should and shouldn't be doing and stuff like that. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, is actually going, what's the worst that can happen? Like at the end of the day, an examiner is there to give what you are entitled to. Like we give what you're entitled to within the constraints of the marking scheme. So like, go for it. Like you know what I mean? Like it's as if students are embarrassed to try and get things wrong. And like, it's like, I'm delighted when someone comes in and they've tried 5 questions and they could be a dog's dinner, But I'm like, oh, but like I can see that, oh, well, you tried to do this and you tried to do that. You're like, okay, you weren't a million miles away. Like we enjoy seeing you try a question. We don't get mad when it's wrong. And I do think that I do think boys are less, what's the phrase? Like I suppose they care less about.
They're less inhibited.
I think so.
Yeah.
I genuinely think so. And I think these statistics about, the males kind of performing better than the females. And I purely think it's not to do with intelligence. I think it's to do with girls overthinking, like, you know what I mean? And boys going, sure, look, I'll throw it down and see what happens. Whereas
And then it's reflected in the amount of students who drop out of STEM, right? Because,
Mhm.
the boys have more that bulgy kind of attitude. I am conscious of time. I want to kind of bring things to a close, but I'm just as an examiner, are
Yeah.
there common mistakes or patterns that you see that get appealed or, that people miss? And, what do you look for when you're correcting a paper?
So we have to work within the constraints of the marking scheme. That is it. And it's designed and we're trained in a way that no matter what examiner corrects your exam, we'll all correct it the same, right? Consistency is important. So I suppose I can't, it's kind of we don't talk too much about it, but I
Sure.
suppose the main mistakes and issues that I see, even with the best of students, is they're not particular enough. So there's an awful lot of marks lost about, multiplying out a bracket wrong or factorize it. You wouldn't believe it. Students think that they need to know all the hard stuff to get top marks. They need to do the straightforward stuff and the simple stuff really, really well and consistently well. And
That's great.
what I see is that actually usually I don't concern myself with what marks, what grade they're getting. I just correct to the best of my ability and move on. But you're like, oh my God, like that was such a silly little mistake, like, and you're doing so well, So, and this is in like, state exams, but it's also in mocks. I correct mocks for a company up there, for a grind school up the country, and own homework that I see from my own students. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's so it's so frustrating. It's like, do the simple stuff well. That's the secret to success in math. Just you don't have to do all the hard stuff well. Well, you do, but the simple stuff is the stuff that catches people out. 100%.
Is that the que is that the que is that the question A's? They're the first questions. Are they get those under your belt?
Maybe. Yeah, and even if they're multiplying out something, if they're multiplying out a fairly hefty question, it's a lot of moving parts. It's just not being particular enough. It's like putting a minus in the wrong place, putting a plus in the wrong place, writing a power of 2 instead of a power of 3. And it's really just losing concentration. And I suppose, look, an exam is a pressurized situation. So I suppose little mistakes that they'd never make would happen. But if someone is like on the cusp of a H2, so they're a top end of a H3 trying to get into a H2, for example, it's probably because you're making silly mistakes. It's probably
I'm
that you've a gap, you know what I mean, in your knowledge.
I'm going to be a little bit controversial here, but has technology dumbed this down? Because one thing I've noticed with a lot of students, I might say, "What's 6/7?" And they're
Mhm.
whereas
Yeah.
and I hate to say back in the day, but this
Mhm.
stuff was very automatic. But now it's calculator, calculator, calculator
Calculator,
for
yeah, yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Has that had a big impact on people's, ability to think, multiply, simple maths concepts?
100%. And even I think like, okay, directly, yes, right? But also I think the ability to just try and figure it out is kind of lost in some cases. Like, oh, sure, I'll just grab the calculator and da da da. Like the amount of students, like over the years, have tried to put in like, oh, but I can't put X squared into my calculator. You use your bloody head. Do you know what I mean? To add it together. We're big darts fans in this house, and I swear, the darts fans a mile away, Ray,
Yep,
because they can
yep.
actually add and subtract over here. You
We
can
were
do it
we
from a
were
mile
big
away.
big in darts in my house as well.
Oh, are
And
you? Oh, very
yeah,
good.
so and yeah, and that's a great
Yeah,
game, right? To become better
yeah.
at maths. You can spot it a mile away. So um just to draw things to a close, and obviously the big thing about for the big word today for everybody is anxiety. And there's
Mm,
so much stress and pressure, and we live in this, world now where there's so much pressure on everybody to achieve.
mm,
And in a leaving cert year or even a junior cert, well, I'm seeing two different things. There's a lot of pressure on the leaving cert, and then there's a kind of idea, sure, it's only the junior cert. So a lot of
yeah,
students
yeah,
are kind of the younger ones don't pay, or for some are not giving it the respect that say
yeah.
the old inter or junior cert.
Mm,
Um, have you seen that as well? Just that junior cycle, the first, second, and third year?
yes, I think so. And, my advice would always be if I can get a junior cert student to stay a higher level, I will. And I will encourage it so much. And even if it's hard work for them, it's worth it. I'm going to go out and say this now, right? Out in the world. I would rather a student get a mediocre junior cert higher level mark than a really, really good junior cert ordinary level mark. I'll tell you why. Because the Junior Cert higher level course is very similar to the Leaving Cert ordinary level course. There's an extra chapter. We do a few extra bits, but it's just a slight extension on the Junior Cert higher level course. So you can imagine there's a jump, like there's already a jump from Junior Cert higher level up to Leaving Cert higher level, but there's not much of a jump. So if you've got a middle of the road, right, in the 50s, student in Junior Cert higher level, they're pretty much already at that level going into their Leaving Cert ordinary level class, and they can move up from there. Whereas a Junior Cert ordinary level student, there's a big step down from higher level. And look, there are students who are best suited for that, and that is fine. Like I get you find your place and where your spot is. But there's an awful lot of students dropping down because they're like, oh, it's too hard. Oh God, it's an awful lot of work. And I'm like, no,
I
take
hear
it
that
easier, take it,
all
take
the
it
time.
easier.
Hear
Yeah,
that
because it's just
all.
easier.
And that's why I get the phone call from a
Yeah,
school or from a parent, and with that extra bit of effort and
yeah.
push, I'm a C student in maths, by the way. I was C at junior cycle and a C at Leaving Cert, but that's H3, H4 territory, but that was my H1, so.
Yes, exactly.
And I had all those discussions and conversations, but it just takes that bit of extra push and work. Just to wrap things up, any parting advice for students going into, a big set of exams who might be feeling the pinch, the pressure?
You need to do yourself justice. And whatever that is, whatever grade that is, it is. But you need to do yourself justice. Give the examiner the most opportunity they can to give you the most marks that they can. If you haven't an absolute bull's notion of how to do question A part C or question 1 part C, do it anyway. Do something. You've done enough maths. You've done enough maths up to this stage in your life. Come up with something because a lot of attempt marks, a lot of, kind of, credit, low credit is probably like 2 marks, 3 marks, maybe. It changes, it depends. But you could get something for what you think is absolutely crap. But we're going, oh, no, that's the correct calculation. So you just don't know. And I
And
just
you
think, don't leave anything behind.
and you can only gain marks. So it's
Exactly.
attempting you can only gain,
You
and
can
I can
only
never
gain
understand
marks.
students leaving exams early, at least attempt every question, give it a go.
Yeah.
Um, Great advice. Amanda, just for anybody out there, where can we send them to if they want to connect with you? What have you got on offer? You have a couple of free resources as well, don't you?
Free resources. So on my TikTok, I do mainly question solutions. So there's loads and they're all labeled and I take requests. So if anybody's looking for a particular style of question, a fully work solution, I do them there. So you can contact me there. Instagram is more details about how to solve something, it's a bit more formal, I suppose, in how I share information there. I have a YouTube channel as well, which is building as we go. So there's plenty of videos up there and plenty more to come as well. And then, of course, I have a website, mrsmattsireland.com, and there I sell learning resources for students and teaching resources for teachers. And also I have weekly maths clinics for all Leaving Cert students. I have the Leaving Cert higher level scheduled till the end of February, so there's loads to choose from. And then there's the Leaving Cert ordinary level are nearly scheduled to February, and they're coming up as the weeks go on. So I suppose.
And that's at mrsmattsireland.com, isn't that right?
Yeah. So I suppose wherever you find me, I'll help you on some regard. You'll get help some way from me.
And not only that, you'll get a smile and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of encouragement. And you know what? This has been absolutely brilliant. I want to say a huge thank you for joining me here and for all your amazing advice and to keep doing what you're doing. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully we'll connect in somewhere else down the track. And to all students out there who are struggling with maths, you've got a lot of great information here. So keep with it and get in there and to in the words of myself is to kind of raise the game and to get it down on paper.
Yes, 100%. And do what's necessary.
Do what's necessary.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Amanda, Mrs. Maths Ireland.
Thank you so much.